Steelers Nation, buckle up because what I'm about to tell you is absolutely massive. We're talking about a game that could define our entire season, and the stakes have never been higher. If you want to stay locked in on every single development, every injury update, and every strategic move the Steelers make, you need to hit that subscribe button right now. This is not the time to miss out on breaking news. Let's dive into what's shaping up to be one of the most intense Steelers-Ravens battles we've seen in years. So here's where we are. The Steelers are staring down the barrel of a must-win situation against the Baltimore Ravens. This isn't just another divisional matchup. This is win-or-go-home football in all but name. The division is on the line. Playoff positioning hangs in the balance. And Mike Tomlin just held a press conference that revealed so much about where this team's head is at right now. Let me paint the picture for you. Just last week, the Steelers had a golden opportunity to clinch the division. They could have wrapped it up, sealed the deal, and headed into the final stretch with everything locked down. But that didn't happen. Instead, they stumbled against Cleveland in a game that left fans frustrated, confused, and honestly a little worried about what comes next. The offense sputtered. The running game didn't dominate like it needed to. And suddenly, all that momentum from earlier in the season felt like it was slipping away. But here's the thing about this Steelers team, and here's the thing about Mike Tomlin. They don't dwell on the past. Tomlin made that crystal clear when he talked to the media. He said something that really stood out to me. He said his windshield is much bigger than his rearview mirror. Think about that for a second. He's not interested in looking back at what went wrong. He's not going to sit around and mope about missed opportunities. His focus is singular, laser-focused on the task ahead. And that task is beating Baltimore in what might be the most important game of the regular season. Now, Baltimore is always a problem. Let me repeat that. Baltimore is always a problem for the Steelers. This rivalry runs deep. These two teams know each other inside and out. They've been dancing this dance for years, and every single time they meet, it's physical, it's intense, and it comes down to who wants it more in those critical moments. Tomlin acknowledged this. He talked about how both teams probably have a wrinkle or two prepared, some new looks, some adjustments based on their last meeting. But at the end of the day, wrinkles don't win games. Playmaking wins games. Executing in those timely moments is what separates winners from losers. And speaking of playmakers, let's talk about the elephant in the room, T.J. Watt. The heartbeat of this defense. The guy who strikes fear into every offensive coordinator in the league. He's been dealing with a medical situation, not just a typical injury, but something that required a more cautious approach. Last week, he practiced. That was huge. That was the first sign that maybe, just maybe, he'd be ready for this showdown with the Ravens. But Tomlin was careful with his words. He didn't commit to anything. He talked about working TJ back into the fold appropriately, making sure they don't rush things and risk a setback. Here's what we know. TJ looked great in practice last week, according to Tomlin. He was excited to be back out there with his teammates. And that's something people don't talk about enough when a star player is sidelined. It's not just the physical recovery, it's the mental and emotional isolation that comes with being separated from your brothers, from the guys you go to war with every Sunday. TJ has been chomping at the bit to get back out there, and you can bet he wants this game against Baltimore more than just about anything. But the question remains, will he play? And if he does play, will it be full-time or situational? Tomlin was asked directly about this. Would he consider using TJ in specific situations, or does he need to be a full-time starter? And Tomlin's answer was perfect. He said he's open to utilizing TJ in any way that's appropriate relative to his availability. Translation, they're going to assess how he looks this week in practice, see how his conditioning is, and make a game-time decision based on what gives them the best chance to win. Now, one reporter asked about TJ's football shape, whether conditioning might be an issue after missing time, and Tomlin shut that down immediately. He said he doubts TJ is ever out of football shape over the course of a 12-month calendar. He talked about how TJ lives his life, how meticulous he is with his training, how thoughtful he is about what he puts in his body. This is a guy who's a professional's professional. Even when he's not playing, he's preparing. So, conditioning? That's probably the least of their concerns. But here's the reality. Even if TJ plays, even if he's close to 100%, this Steelers team is dealing with some significant challenges. Darnell Washington is out. Now, Tomlin was asked if that's a season-ending situation, and he was very careful with his answer. He said Washington's not available this week, and that's all the information he's concerned about. Classic Tomlin. He's treating this like a one-week season. Nothing else matters except beating Baltimore. Losing Washington is tough, though. He's a unique athlete, a guy who brings a physical dimension to the tight end position that's hard to replace. But Tomlin pointed out that they use a lot of tight ends, and they also use guys at the tight end position who don't traditionally play tight end. He mentioned Spencer Anderson as an example. They've got options, they've got versatility, and with a full week to prepare, he's confident they can formulate a strategic approach that compensates for Washington's absence. But the injuries don't stop there, and this is where things get really interesting. The offense is missing a key piece. Now, the source material mentions DK, and while there's some confusion in the transcript, what's clear is that the Steelers are without one of their primary playmakers in the passing game. When they played Baltimore last time, this player had a huge game. He torched their secondary. He was the guy who opened things up for everyone else. And now he's not available. So how do you replace that kind of production? Tomlin was asked this very question. The Browns just played the Steelers and tried to play man coverage, essentially challenging Pittsburgh to beat them through the air without their top weapon. And it didn't go great. The Steelers struggled to create explosive plays in the passing game. So what happens when Baltimore comes in with a similar game plan? What happens when they decide to take away the deep ball and force Pittsburgh to win with their secondary options? Tomlin's answer was straightforward. If they get one-on-one playmaking opportunities, they've got to make those plays. And he believes they have very capable men who can do exactly that. He made a point that really resonated with me. He said there's a fine line between being a Pro Bowler and being a backup. These guys are at the top of the food chain in the football world. The expectation should be that with a full week to prepare, with a thoughtful game plan, they can position their players to take advantage of opportunities when they present themselves. And this brings us to Roman Wilson. Remember him? The young receiver who was supposed to be getting more opportunities? Last week, Tomlin talked him up. He mentioned Wilson as a guy who could step into a bigger role, someone who could help replace that missing production. But then Sunday happened, and Wilson played a grand total of 9 snaps. 9. Naturally, reporters wanted to know what happened. Why all the talk about Wilson if he's barely seeing the field? Tomlin's explanation was revealing. He said, when you're not winning on third downs, nobody plays as much as they'd like. The Steelers had a game plan to control the game through the running game. Tomlin felt really good about their run plan going in. He thought they had an opportunity to dominate on the ground and control the clock. But things didn't work out that way. They didn't convert possession downs. They didn't sustain drives the way they needed to. And when that happens, guys like Roman Wilson don't get the snaps they need to make an impact. It's a chicken and egg situation. Wilson needs opportunities to develop. He needs reps to build chemistry with the quarterback. But he can't get those reps if the offense isn't moving the ball and staying on the field. So what changes this week? That's the million-dollar question. Can the Steelers establish the run game against a tough Baltimore front? Can they convert on third down and give their playmakers a chance to actually make plays? Here's another interesting tidbit. Last week, the Steelers had 16 targets go to guys like Marvin Scantling and Miller. Meanwhile, other pass catchers who have traditionally been bigger parts of the offense got very limited targets. Only 5 targets for one of their running backs, for example. So is that a scheme issue? Is that a game plan thing? Or is it just how the game unfolded based on what the defense was giving them? Tomlin addressed this too. He said they draw up enough schematics to spread the ball around. They believe all their eligible receivers are playmakers. But there are a lot of variables that determine how the ball gets distributed. Schematic approach, matchups, what the opposing defense is doing, all of that factors in. And what might have been a story or a challenge last week might not be relevant this week at all. Every game is different. Every opponent presents different problems to solve. But let's get to the heart of the matter. Let's talk about what really decides Steelers-Ravens games. Defense, specifically stopping the run. And even more specifically, stopping Derrick Henry and containing Lamar Jackson. Because that's the nightmare scenario for any defensive coordinator. You've got the most dynamic running quarterback in the NFL paired with one of the most powerful running backs in the league. How do you stop both? The last time these teams played, Baltimore ran for over 200 yards. 200 yards, that's domination. That's physical football at its finest. And yet somehow, the Steelers still won that game. They found a way despite getting gashed on the ground. But can they count on that happening again? Can they really expect to win if Baltimore is running the ball down their throats for 4 quarters? Tomlin knows this is the key. When asked what's changed with the run defense since that last Baltimore game, he pointed to player availability, guys like DeMarvin Leal being back in the lineup. He mentioned how significant certain players' presence has been and how having that stability and depth back could be helpful. But he also acknowledged they're not doing anything dramatically different schematically. They're stacking the box when appropriate. They're making judgments about when to commit extra defenders to the run and when to stay balanced to defend the pass. But here's the thing that makes Baltimore so difficult. It's not just Henry, it's not just Lamar, it's the combination. Tomlin explained this perfectly. The quarterback mobility forces you into 11-on-11 football. Even when Lamar doesn't keep the ball, the threat of him keeping it means you can't just load the box with extra defenders. That thins out your second and third levels of defense. It creates running lanes. It makes everything harder. And even if Lamar isn't playing, even if Tyler Huntley is under center, Baltimore still runs the same offensive personality. They've got experience with Huntley. He was even a Pro Bowler one year when Lamar missed significant time. So this isn't some backup quarterback situation where you can expect Baltimore to completely change what they do. They're going to run the ball. They're going to try to control the line of scrimmage. And when things get thick, as Tomlin put it, the ball is going through the big runner. That's Derrick Henry, and that's what the Steelers have to prepare for. So what's the answer? How do you stop this offense? Tomlin talked about competing at a high level and being connected. He talked about the importance of stability, having the same guys in the same roles, executing the fundamentals they know well. At this stage of the season, it's not about installing a bunch of new wrinkles. It's about doing what you do at the highest possible level. It's about making plays in critical moments. And this is where the intangibles come in. This is where leadership matters. Tomlin was asked how he instills his forward-looking mindset in his players, how he gets them to focus on what's ahead instead of dwelling on what went wrong last week. His answer was simple but powerful. He displays it in his actions. He embraces it as a leader. There are things you say, and then there's how you move, and he makes sure both are aligned. He's prepared to display singular focus, preparedness, and urgency this week as they lean into this opportunity. Someone asked for a specific example of how that would look different from a normal week. Tomlin's response? No. He's not going to spell it out. He's not going to give you a checklist. But you'll see it in how he moves, how he prepares, how he demands excellence from every single person in that building. And what about the players? What kind of response has Tomlin seen from them after the Cleveland loss? Honestly, he didn't seem concerned about their response in meetings. He said responses are action-based, and Monday meetings are just about reviewing what happened and beginning to formulate a plan. The real response, the one that matters, will come tomorrow and throughout the week. It'll show up in their physical labor, in the spirit with which they practice, in their attention to detail. That's what will determine the quality of their play and their chances of winning, not their reaction to a Monday meeting. Patrick Queen, one of the team's leaders, said something powerful after the Cleveland game. He said, "If you really love the sport, if you really love the game, you have to be a competitor." And Tomlin was asked how he sees that displayed from his guys, particularly the leaders, as the road gets narrow. His answer? They'll write that story this week when the physical work begins. But does he have the right guys? Absolutely. That's what they painstakingly evaluate when they're drafting players or signing free agents. Are they good men? Do they have good relationships with the game of football? Do they love it? Because when you love it, everything else is more fluid. This game is essentially a playoff game. Win and you're in control. Lose and everything gets complicated. So, does Tomlin approach it differently from a coaching standpoint? Does he take more chances? Get more aggressive with his play calling? His answer was fascinating. He said this is reflective of December football in general. As the road gets narrow, as the season reaches its critical stretch, you see coaches taking calculated risks in pursuit of victory, and the Steelers are not opposed to that. Home field advantage matters in a game like this. Tomlin made that clear. The opposing offense's ability to change plays at the line of scrimmage gets challenged in a hostile environment. Communication becomes harder. Getting into the right schemes becomes more difficult. That's why it was so important that the Steelers scored on their opening drive the last time they went to Baltimore. It neutralized some of that crowd noise, took some of the energy out of the building. This week, the Steelers are at home. And you better believe Tomlin is glad this game is being played at Acrisure Stadium. But here's the reality check. The run defense has been inconsistent. They've shut down guys like Jonathan Taylor and other elite backs. But they've also allowed explosive runs to other opponents. What's the difference? In many cases, it's been games where they also had to deal with a mobile quarterback. When you're defending the run and simultaneously accounting for a quarterback who can take off and pick up chunks of yards, execution becomes exponentially harder. Tomlin didn't want to paint with a broad brush and assess multiple games, but he acknowledged they've had some good games and some not-so-good games when it comes to minimizing the run. The key is understanding the gravity of the run game as it pertains to this matchup specifically. It's a major component of engineering victory. They're committed to putting together a good plan to minimize Baltimore's ground attack, because without doing that, winning becomes nearly impossible. Fourth down decisions came up too. Tomlin was asked about his awareness of the exact distance on fourth and short situations. He said he works to be aware, but replay assist sometimes makes judgments that alter the spot in some way. That's why you'll sometimes see him leaving the coach's box to get a better view on something as the ball is being spotted. It's just one of the challenges of the modern game. And then there's the mental aspect, the veteran presence that can calm a team in high-pressure situations. Having experienced players who've been through these battles before, who've played meaningful football in December and January, that matters. Especially when you have young guys on the offensive line who haven't experienced this level of intensity. That veteran leadership provides stability in thick moments. Tomlin talked about how certain players are particularly effective against zone coverage. Pat Freiermuth, for example, is excellent against zone. But whether they choose to utilize that depends on the weekly game plan, the anticipated defensive schemes, and the matchups they're trying to exploit. Some weeks are zone weeks. Some weeks are man-to-man weeks. Different players get highlighted based on those strategic discussions. And here's something that can't be overlooked: ball security and turnovers. Tomlin mentioned this as one of several variables that can significantly affect the outcome. Taking the ball away on defense and preserving it on offense is crucial. Splash plays in the kicking game can flip momentum. There are a myriad of variables that impact how you engineer victory, which is why they always put multiple lines in the water, working all components of the equation to increase their chances. The confidence level is there. players have expressed belief that they're going to come home and win this game. And why wouldn't they? They've beaten Baltimore before this season. They know they can do it. But knowing you can do something and actually doing it are two different things. Execution is everything. Tomlin was asked if there's anything they can take from their successful 2-minute drives and apply to other parts of the game. There's certainly a carryover from a self-belief perspective. When you execute at a high level in those pressure situations, it builds confidence. But there's also the defensive schematic component. Defenses often play differently in 2-minute situations, so what works there might not translate directly to other game situations. The bottom line is this: the Steelers are preparing for the biggest game of their season. They're dealing with injuries. They're dealing with inconsistency on offense. They're facing a Baltimore team that knows how to run the football and control the clock. But they're at home. They have leaders who've been in big games before, and they have a head coach who's been here 1,000 times and knows exactly what it takes to win. This is Steelers-Ravens football at its finest. This is what the rivalry is all about. Physical, hard-nosed, win-or-go-home intensity. And if you're a Steelers fan, you wouldn't want it any other way. This team has a chance to make a statement, a chance to prove that the Cleveland loss was just a bump in the road, a chance to show that when it matters most, they're still the team to beat in the AFC North. Make sure you're subscribed because we're going to have wall-to-wall coverage all week long. Every practice report, every injury update, every strategic breakdown. This is what we live for: Steelers versus Ravens, the division on the line, and everything to play for. Let's go.